take your Bibles and let's go to the book of Numbers, chapter 12, and delve into this text. I mentioned before that the book of Numbers is one continual testing of faith and one continual complaint after another with regards to the children of Israel. One testing after the other. So I want to go to Numbers chapter 12 and begin with verse 1. Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman he had married, for he had married a Cushite woman. Okay, so let's stop there. All right, a couple things. Notice the order of the words here. That's important. It says if it's Miriam and Aaron. Anywhere else that these two are mentioned, it's Aaron and Miriam. Even later on in the text, it's going to be Aaron and Miriam. She's mentioned first in the text. That's the first thing that kind of strikes you as I'm reading this. The other thing is, it says spoke, and normally in Hebrew you would have, and you should have it this way, Miriam and Aaron, they spoke against Moses. It should be, the ending should say, they spoke. What's interesting here is, the verb is a 2ms, which is she spoke. So that the way that the text reads is, Miriam and Aaron, she said.
So Miriam dragged
Aaron. Miriam was the primary speaker.
The instigator.
She was the instigator or the initiator, based on the syntax, the order, and based on the verbal form. She spoke. Okay? So Aaron's probably standing there with her, and Miriam's the one talking. Okay? Moses and Aaron, Miriam and Aaron, she spoke. And so the pronominal ending here on spoke is feminine, second feminine. So it's the idea of Miriam spoke. At least she's the primary one. And again, that's based on the order and based on the verbal form. So we have to know that going into this. And they're upset because he had married a Cushite woman. Okay? In your notes they gave you, they sent out, I talk about this particular woman and where she's from. So at the end of this, I write ambiguity over the meaning of the word Cushite may mean that we never reach a consensus as to what woman or wife is being referred to here. The word Cushite can biblically describe those living near Babylon, according to Genesis 10, or Ethiopia, Isaiah 20, Nahum 3, or perhaps be associated with Midian, based on Habakkuk 3:7. There's some ambiguity here as to the identity of the country that she's from. Although, interestingly enough, the Septuagint, the Greek translation, settles the argument for its readers by saying that she was of Ethiopian descent. Okay, so they narrow it down and say, look, it's Ethiopia. Which would be ironic. Think about this. If it's Ethiopia, keep in the back of your mind that they're probably darker skinned people. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Let's say that they're darker skinned. More than likely. Okay? Hold that thought. Within traditional Judaism, we have an individual called Kofetz Chaim, which means delight in life. You also have Zelig Pliskin, as another individual, who have written volumes on what you can say, when you can say it, how you should say it, and all the different types of speech that there are. And I think it would do us well to study speech and what we say. Because we can always say things better. We can always say them in a way that's less offensive. We can be careful with our speech.
Or we cannot say them at all.
Or we cannot say anything at all. And sometimes the best thing to say is nothing at all.
Yeah, Corey.
You know, learning sometimes that you don't have to fight on every mountain. That you don't have to fight on every hill. That, you know, just let some things go and just say, okay, it's all right to let it go. Not to say anything. You know, picking your battles, choosing your battles. Sometimes you need to say something. Sometimes you don't need to say anything. And then if you're going to say something, thinking about how you say it, the way you say it, the words you use. Because we all know this. You're going to hear me say this multiple times. Words have power. They have power. And I told you before, we were lied to in grade school. At least I was. How many of you remember this one? Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Wrong! Sticks and stones can only break your bones. Words can do damage that's never repaired.
Yes.
And so, there's not a one of us that hasn't hurt somebody or been hurt by words that have been spoken. We've all said things that as soon as you said it, you thought to yourself, oh, wish I hadn't said that. Shouldn't have said that. Wish I could take that back. And we know that Miriam and Aaron are older than Moses. Moses is at least, we know that Aaron is 3 years older than Moses. We're told that later, we're told that in the Torah. So there's something about having older siblings that makes them think that they have more authority and rights than younger siblings. And especially in those situations where parents, and I've seen this happen numerous times, you have too, where parents put older siblings in charge of younger siblings. You ever seen that happen?
Yeah.
You, watch your brother and sister. Make sure they don't get any trouble, and report to me if anything needs to be, if anything needs to be found out. You see that happen all the time in larger families especially, because the older children, I mean, you have a child who's 15, and I had a kid in my high school. He's 18 years old, and his mom's having a child. You think, well, he's going to end up being a parent to this kid, not a sibling. Okay? So, it's just odd. You think 18 years, I mean, that's lifetime. But you see in these bigger families where older kids take care of the younger kids. Well, Aaron and Miriam are older than Moses. But Moses had been exalted by God to the position of leadership in the nation of Israel as the leader. All right, let's continue reading. Look what happens. We go to verse 3.
This seems interesting too, that twice in this one verse, the Lord points out that it was a Cushite woman.
Yes. Yeah.
Two
times, yeah. It's very redundant. And I've told you before, whenever we have those redundancies, it's the way the text is kind of drawing us down to something and saying, let's focus on this. Pay attention to this. This is important. When there's that type of redundancy, you don't need to say it again. Yeah, at the very end here, because he took a Cushite woman for wife. Again, we've heard it once before. Why do we hear it again? Yes.
And I think it speaks to the fact that it's a mixed marriage.
Yes.
And here is God's chosen leader who is married to someone who's not Israelite.
Right.
And so, there's a metaphor there, and there's a lesson that God can accept everyone. And I think it's the classic, the foreigner who sojourns with you, who
exactly
in equal status.
Yeah, the
doesn't
foreigner,
make a difference
right.
of the race and the color.
Exactly. The foreigner, I've said this before. I've always gotten me in trouble before because people have misinterpreted. I said that God is against interracial marriages in the Hebrew Scripture because those interracial marriages were interreligious. Because you were dealing with two individuals who were coming from different religious backgrounds. Because it's assumed in the Torah that if you are a Moabite, you're going to worship the god of the Moabites. If you're a Canaanite, you're going to worship Baal. So it just makes a blanket statement: don't marry any Canaanites. Don't marry any Moabites. Why? Because we can assume that for the most part, these people worship these gods. Now, Ruth is an exception. Ruth says she's a Moabite. Your people, my people. Your God, my God. She makes a change. So in those places where those individuals have made a change, there can be an exception made. So maybe this Cushite woman is a godly woman, and Moses sees no problem in marrying her because she's come to faith in the living God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as a foreigner.
Just to remind me, he didn't circumcise his kids.
Yeah, that's Zipporah, and that may be a different wife. But that's the other question. Is this Zipporah? It looks like it's not Zipporah. Which, by the way, I mentioned in the text, Zipporah means bird. It's a feminine form of bird, so lady bird. That's the idea, named after an animal. Unusual in biblical text. Now, look at verse 3. It says, "Now the man Moses was very meek, more than all people who were on the face of the earth." I make note in your handout that there's a debate over this word for meek. You can read through that. I'm not going to go through all that. Cleon Rogers, in an article he did for Jets, makes the argument that the word here that's translated, that we get translated meek, actually means miserable. So that he's the most miserable man on the face of the earth. I gotta tell you, if you had to deal with this crew coming out of Egypt, you'd be really miserable too. I know this group complains every time they turn around. You know, you look at this group and it's like, well, we don't have any water. We don't have any food. We should go back to Egypt. You know, it's all complaint, complaint, complaint. Kvetch, kvetch, kvetch. You know, and now it's not just anybody kvetching, it's family kvetching. And I gotta tell you, there's complaint, and then there's complaint from family. And the truth about family is this: family knows how to push your buttons like nobody else does. You can tolerate things from other people, and you let it run off your back, no problem, and then the family says the same thing, and you're like, how dare they? It just bothers you in ways that it doesn't when it's somebody else. Family knows how to push buttons. They know where the weak spots are. They know exactly how to dig a knife in, just make a little point, just dig it in a little bit. And all that history and all that background come flooding back, and you raise up and you're like, ugh, you know, how dare they? Family. So here's Aaron and Miriam coming against Moses. Now it's family. Notice what happens. I'll let you read the notes on the Jets article. You can read that. I'm not going to fight that one too much. Look at verse 5. And suddenly the Lord said to Moses and to Aaron and Miriam, "Come out, you three, to the tent meeting." And the three of them came out. And the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud and stood at the entrance of the tent and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forward. So God kind of called them on the carpet. It's like one of the principal's office. God comes down in this pillar, right? And verse 6 says, "Hear my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak with him in a dream." Okay, so what book do we say has the most dreams per capita of all the biblical books? Genesis, thank you. Genesis, not Daniel, Genesis. Yeah, Genesis has dreams everywhere. So the word kalom, dreams. Visions, you are awake and God speaks to you and you see something in your mind's eye. Dreams, God speaks to his people when they go to sleep. He says, with Moses, I didn't speak to him in dreams and visions. I actually spoke to Moses, and we find it earlier in the Hebrew text, in the Torah. God comes down on Mount Sinai. Moses sees God, whatever that means, and we're told that he sees Moses sees God, panim el panim, face to face. Okay? They have some type of face-to-face interaction. That's incredible. Other people, dreams. Other people, visions. I actually show up to talk to Moses. Now look what happens. It says this in verse 7. "Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak. Now, how many of your translations say face to face? Your translation says face to face? You looking at the translation? What does your translation say, Chris?
Mouth to mouth.
Mouth to mouth? Good. Mouth to mouth? Good. ESV has mouth to mouth? Good. Here's the key. When I first, a lot of the translations say face to face because they assume that face to face and mouth to mouth are the same thing. They're not. This is why you have to have a text that actually gives you what the text says. It's in chapter 12 here, it's mouth to mouth. So I ran the phrase mouth to mouth, and here's where it appears. Here's the other three occurrences. You can go look for them yourself. 2 Kings chapter 10, it says, then Jehu sinned throughout Israel, and all the worshippers of Baal came, so that there was not a man left who did not come. And when they went into the house of Baal was filled from mouth to mouth. It was filled, a place was filled from mouth to mouth. 2 Kings 21:16. Blood was filled Jerusalem from one end to the other, mouth to mouth. And Ezra 9:11, he says, their abominations have filled it from mouth to mouth. These are not, it's talking about fullness. Fill something, a space filled from the one end to the other. Here's the point. This is key. This is key. God spoke the fullness of the revelation to Moses, at least in seed form. Moses got it all. He got it all, at least in seed form. He may not have understood it all. He may not have understood everything, but Moses got the revelation that God wanted to give him. And he got it from mouth to mouth, fullness. That's key. Which is why I said, I should go back to what I said earlier. I misspoke, probably misspoke with regard to Paul. I accept Paul's text as scripture. However, I believe that our theology must begin foundationally with the Torah, then the prophets, then the writings, then the Gospels, then Paul, in that order. So I don't start with Paul and work down. I start with the foundation and work up. So I misspoke earlier about Paul. I don't think Paul is coming back to the foundation and saying, let's kick it out and start all over. So that's what I was trying to say earlier, is I don't start particularly with Paul. I'll go there eventually. We get there. But I don't want to start there. I want to start with the foundation and work my way up. And the reason I do that is because I look at these texts and say, it says, I spoke to Moses the fullness of the revelation. I gave him the basic plan and outline. And then that is substantiated by the apostolic scripture, where we have beginning with Moses and the prophets. Beginning with Moses and the prophets. And that becomes a phrase that we hear all throughout the scriptures to say, the apostolic text to say, focus on these texts because they give us the foundation. Yes?
I have a question. My translation says, I speak to him in a dream. Is that in this translation?
Read the whole thing in a second.
I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak to him in a dream.
Oh, hold on.
Isn't that way for Moses?
No, he says,
I'm sorry.
if there's a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak to him in a dream. Okay. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak mouth to mouth. That is, it's not speaking about the proximity. That's already been established with panim el panim. And he speaks in proximity to Moses. Mouth to mouth is, I spoke to Moses the fullest of the revelation. Okay? And then he says this, clearly and not in riddles, and he beholds the form of the Lord. He beholds the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? And the anger of the Lord was kindled against him, and he departed. Okay, now let's continue reading. Now look what happens. When the cloud removed from over the tent, behold, Miriam, and your translation say, was leprous as snow. Isn't that ironic? She's as white as snow, complaining about the fact that Moses may have married a black man. A little play on this idea of black and white. You're all worried about him marrying a black woman? Well, now you're going to be white. We've mentioned before, though, that this word leprosy is the Hebrew word zara'at, which stands for all kinds of different types of skin disorders. There were how many people in the Hebrew scriptures that were leprous, that had zara'at? How many? Well, that are mentioned for us. That are mentioned. Naaman from Syria. He's healed by going to the prophet. The prophet tells him to go dip in the Jordan.
Prophet's servant.
And the prophet's servant gets it. Moses puts his hand inside his cloak. It comes out with zara'at. He puts his hand back in. It's healed. And Miriam. 3 individuals that we're told about. Naaman, a foreigner. Miriam, about as insider as you get. Okay? Insiders and outsiders can be healed and can be delivered of this. Fast forward to our apostolic text. What happens? 10 people with zara'at come to Yeshua and he heals them. One of them comes back and says, hey, by the way, thanks. And he says, how many did I heal? Didn't I heal 10 and only 1 comes back? And then notice what he says to this guy. Notice what Yeshua says to him. In full accord with the Torah, he says, go show yourself to the priest. Okay? Just like the Torah required. Go show yourself to the priest. And later on he tells others that he heals like this, but then to offer the sacrifices at most and get the cleansing. Okay? So the very same thing. The rules haven't changed. Yes.
It's kind of, as you look at this, Miriam, who's jealous of her younger brother because he's got the anointment of God and she didn't get to share in it. And yet God could have taken her life completely, but he gave her leprosy and it placed her as though she was dead.
Yes.
But
yes.
then he restored her later.
Yes.
To teach her that lesson.
Absolutely. And by the way, the smoke screen issue was Moses' relationship to this woman. The real issue was this. Let's go back. The real issue was this. They said, has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses?
Right. He was jealous.
Yes. Has he not spoken through us also? And it says, look at that, at the end of that, and the Lord heard it. Let me suggest to you this. Let me suggest to you that verse 2 when it says, and they said, sometimes in the Hebrew scriptures, the word said can mean thought. There are many times where the word said can mean they thought. Not always is it spoken out loud, but listen to this. Let me suggest to you this, that God even knows your thoughts. We know that because Yeshua, being Yahweh on the ground, on a couple of occasions, says to individuals, it says he knew what they were thinking. So even if you don't say it even if you don't say it out loud, if it runs across your head, and you think it, and you say it in your mind, that could be enough to get you in trouble. And the real issue with them wasn't, the smokescreen issue was Cush, and this Cushite woman. The real issue was, who does that Moses think he is? He's our little brother. Does he think God only spoke through him? Are you kidding me? Miriam's like, I'm a prophetess. I should be a leader. Aaron and I should be leaders. And God says, you're not the one I've chosen. I gave the fullness of the revelation of Moses. And oh, by the way, check this out. When the cloud removed from over the tent, behold, Miriam was leprous, zara'at, and Aaron turned toward Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. And Aaron said to Moses, O my Lord, do not punish us, because we have done foolishly and have sinned. Let her not be as one dead whose flesh is half eaten away when he comes out of his mother's womb. Wow, she looks pretty bad. And Moses cried to the Lord, O God, now look at this. In your Hebrew text, I want to read this to you how it sounds, because it's very, very broken. This also brings us to something else here. Be careful of the people you speak against, because at some point down the road you may need them again. be careful of the people you speak against, because there may come a time down the road you need them. And look what happens here. Moses says this. Moses says, I'm going to read it to you. He says, El na rifa na la. El na rifa na la. God, please heal, please her. It's very broken. It's very choppy Hebrew. El na rifa na la. So, please, God, please heal, please her. And if Moses doesn't ask for her healing, it doesn't happen. Now check this out. It says this, verse 14, but the Lord said to Moses, if her father had but spit in her face, should she not be shamed 7 days? It's a question. Rhetorical, of course. Let her be shut outside the camp 7 days, and after that she may be brought in again. So Miriam was shut outside the camp 7 days, and the people did not set out on the march till Miriam was brought in again. We don't think this way. I know this goes against everything in the West. This goes against everything in Western thinking. That our sin can have an effect, an impact on other people, and cause other people to not go any further. So we're not going to, as a group, we're not going to go anywhere until Miriam can go with us. We're going to wait 7 days. She's going to have to be purified, and we're going to wait this out. We don't like that. That notion that my sin could have an impact on somebody else and cause them problems. But I would make the argument that I think the ripple down effect of sin happens all the time. We just don't think about it in those terms. We think very much in the West like, well, if I screw up, I hear people say this all the time. If I mess up, or if I sin, if I screw up, the only person I'm hurting is myself. No. Oftentimes the person you're hurting is family and friends and a lot of other people down the line. People don't think that way. But this whole community is not going anywhere until Miriam's healed. And Moses has to pray for her. Yeah.
Well, look at the state of our nation right now because of some people who are rejecting God's commandments, His rule, His authority. Even those who are believers are being affected by the state of our nation as it's basically falling off a cliff.
Oh, definitely.
Morally.
Absolutely. And understand this, my brothers and sisters. God will eventually, there will be eventual judgment that comes, and when it comes, there will be collateral damage. There will be collateral damage. That's the nature of how this works. I'd love it if,